Hello, friends, and welcome to the Interworld podcast, where we explore the intersection of personal and collective transformation. My name is Yasha S. Wagner, and I'm a PhD researcher in the field of psychology, well-being, and spirituality, as well as a founder of the Interworld Institute for Inner World Peace. You can learn more about our nonprofit initiatives by going to interworld.org. Today, I have the great pleasure of sitting down to talk with one of my dear friends and soul brothers, Bloomurian. Bloomurian is the stage name of Robin Liepman, and I also call him Bloom in general. So it goes by many names. But Bloom is an amazing music producer, a prolific DJ who's currently releasing a lot of original music on all platforms. So you can check out Bloomurian, and is an event producer, playing a lot of events live and also organizing and producing and promoting events regularly as well. Bloom is also a permaculture and regenerative land design enthusiast with a farm project that he and his partner Saoirse are currently developing in Boulder. And Bloom is also a co-founder of Boulder Ecstatic Dance and a producer of the Boulder Ecstatic Dance, which is running every Sunday in Boulder, is a real cultural beacon and convergence point for people, and even had a huge New Year's convergence with Denver Ecstatic Dance this year. That was a lot of fun to attend. So Bloom's a bit of a legend on the local scene and even globally, and definitely on the rise as a musician and DJ, kind of blowing up these days online and at his events. So I'm very happy to be talking with him and happy for his growth and success. Without further ado, here's my conversation with Bloom. Hey, brother.
Hey, good to see you.
You too. Welcome to the podcast.
Thanks. Good to be on.
Yeah, it's good to have you. So I'm always doing this, but it's Liepman, right? Not Liepman. Or is it Liepman?
Yeah. It's like a leapfrog, or as my dad used to call me, quantum Liepman.
Yeah. For listeners who don't know, I guess we should just say straight off the bat, in case it happens, that Bloom and I are the kind of buddies that constantly get super goofy with each other. So if we go into a comedic zone and start talking about quantum leaping, that's just kind of how it goes with our friendship. Yeah. So anyways, I think we could just dive right in. I know that bio doesn't always fully encapsulate a person's journey. So if you want to share more about yourself from the get-go, you can. And then I want to ask you a bit about music and creative approach. But if you have any highlights from your personal journey that you want to share, feel free.
Yeah, thanks. Well, yeah, I'm born and raised in California, went to UC Santa Cruz and studied psychology and cognitive science, but took a ton of extracurricular classes on all sorts of topics, and then started traveling around the world and went to Mexico for the end of the world, the December 21st, 2012, which was actually just the end of the Mayan calendar and the beginning of new cycle. And then just kept traveling, going to all these music festivals for a long time, and eventually ended up in Colorado 4.5 years ago, where I started putting myself out there as a DJ and music producer. And now I'm living at this beautiful 7-acre farm in Longmont. And like you mentioned, helping to run the Boulder Ecstatic Dance, which I founded with Danny Balguyan, and Ali Constantine was part of initially founding it with us. And also, putting on all sorts of events, DJing and all sorts of events, putting out a lot of music, and now living on land where I can be in regenerative relationship as well. So yeah, that's kind of the short summary, and we'll be stretching it all out as we get into more details of things.
Yeah, sounds good. I guess I might as well mention that for most of the last several years, before you moved on to this new farm project, which I have yet to see, You've been living with Amani Friend of Desert Dwellers and Liquid Bloom, who's a good mutual friend of ours. No pun intended. And y'all had a beautiful studio and house in the mountains outside Boulder that I'd always love to visit and stay at. And you and Liquid Bloom have at least 10 or more songs and collaborations on desert tracks that I think you mentioned you'll be releasing a whole EP.
Yeah, well, the songs are already released, so we'll be releasing a compilation album of all the songs we made together. So yeah, during the last 4.5 years while I was living there, I was working on all sorts of music, but it included a lot of collaborations with Liquid Bloom, and a lot of those songs have been remixed by people, and there's still some remixes in the works, and we have one final song that we're finishing up, and then yeah, so we made a lot of music together during that time.
Very cool. Is y'all's like brothers circle a kind of a private project, or is that something you share about at all?
Yeah, we share about it now because we've been releasing music under the name Keepers of the Fire. So that's actually how I ended up here in Colorado. In a way, I was in Costa Rica, the pandemic happened, and then I joined this men's group online because it was a men's group of touring musicians that now all of a sudden had no gigs, and we were all just stuck at home. And so we started this men's group, started having Zoom calls every week, and then eventually Porangi, who lives in Sedona, Arizona, invited us to an in-person retreat in Sedona. And then from there, Amani was going back to Boulder, and I got a ride with him and ended up living in Boulder after that. That's the short version of the story. There's a lot more to it. But yeah, and so then we had a second retreat a year or two later, and that was focused on actually making music together. So we made a ton of songs, and we've released 3 so far. One of them recently came out called Voices in the Stones, and we're slowly, amongst our busy lives, finishing up more tracks. But yeah, Keepers of the Fire is definitely something we've gone public with.
Nice. Can I ask who all is in that crew, if you can remind me?
Yeah, it's if you go to any of the songs and check the stats on Spotify, that's how you'll find out. But it's Porangi, Liquid Bloom, so Amani, Biko Cassini from Rising Appalachia, Vera McCoy, Evan Fraser, and David Satori from Dirtwire. David's also started Beats Antique. And then Sahuna, Shaman's Dream, and Joss Jaffe. And so there's 9 of us.
Okay, awesome. Very cool. Yeah, so I know that's just one of the many kind of networks and webs of awesome people that you're involved with, and we're kind of both connected to in different areas, but I figured I'd ask. Thanks for sharing about that. Why don't we jump into music and the creative process as our main first topic here? So I'm curious, how do you go about making music? What's your relationship to sound in general, sound waves, and just the art and creation and expression of music and yourself through sound? Is there a certain way you get into a zone of inspiration? Do you have, previous artistry that particularly influences you? Like, what's your approach to creation?
Yeah. Well, with electronic music, which I've been focusing on now, it's a different approach than singer-songwriter, which is what I was doing before I started DJing and making electronic music. So with singer-songwriter, it was always go out into wilderness, far away from any people, where I'm not even worried about someone walking by me. So I can just be in an uninterrupted flow state, get in the zone, and just like start playing the guitar, singing, see whatever comes through. If something starts forming into a song, I'll hit record on my phone and start writing in my journal, and then refine the song. And there are some similarities between that and the electronic music process. So it's like this initial just kind of opening up to the flow state, seeing what creative energy wants to flow through, and then refining that into a structured song. So that's with singer-songwriter. With electronic music, it depends, because sometimes it's like a collaboration with someone who's already started the song, or it's like we're going for a certain idea or vibe. But I'd say the majority of the times it's similar to the singer-songwriter, where it's just like complete infinite possibility moment where it's just, all right, I'm going to get into a flow state and see what happens. And then once something starts forming, that's when I'm like, okay, this is a vibe. This is like, I now know the key of the song. I know the BPM. I know the genre and the vibe. So now I'm going to keep going down that path of expression and then refining it and starting to structure the song. So a lot of times, like for example, if I'm just starting from scratch with no intention or agenda other than to create music and express and get into a flow state, what I'll do is I'll start finding sounds. A lot of times it will be through synthesizers like Serum or Current or Vital, and just finding sounds that I like, that I'm feeling in the moment. And then I'll start adding on other sounds, maybe some samples, some atmospheric pads. I'll start making a beat and I'll just get into a groove, and it's just kind of a anything's possible moment. And then once something starts forming, then I'll make a loop and I'll create a loop with a beat and an energy and just see if I can like really get into that. And what my approach is to create the core essence of the vibe of the song first before anything else. So it's not a like start to finish process of like, here's the intro and then here's the next section. It's more like, let's focus on the core essence of the song first. And then I stretch that out into the structure of the song and figure out, all right, like strip back some layers to make the intro and the outro, and then create some variations between the different sections so that there's just a lot of contrast and energy and movement throughout the song, but there's still cohesion. So it feels like it's the same songs, because in music production, you want to avoid like feeling like it's 5 songs within one song. So you want to have cohesion and have like, this is the vibe that is expressed the entire time, but you also want to keep it moving and interesting and have variations and contrasts and peaks and valleys and whatnot. So yeah, that's kind of my process. And of course, when I'm collaborating with someone too, it's a unique thing that forms between my process and the process of the person I'm collaborating with.
Yeah. Wow. Very cool. So you mentioned flow state. Do you feel like there's ever almost a spiritual experience of needing to just get out of the way because some wave of inspiration is flowing through you, where you're just like excited and need to allow something from some higher source to just like move through you and be expressed into the world? Do you ever get into that place with your creative process?
Yeah, definitely. That's why I feel like I like to look at them as different sessions between the initial like creative energy and expression, and then another session for like, all right, let's refine this and put some structure to it and things like that, because I might limit myself to the point of not discovering things that I wouldn't have otherwise if I am just too focused on the structure from the beginning. So sometimes when I'm just in a creative flow state, I might actually have the song explore 3 or 4 or 5 different genres because I haven't fully figured out what the song's expression is yet. So I'll just allow myself to like play and explore and see what I'm feeling the most before I really refine and focus the energy. And then that allows for happy accidents, all sorts of possibilities, and just this like childlike creative state before I really get into the structure of the song and the mix down.
Yeah. Yeah. Cool. Do you feel like there's even another degree of stepping further away from that, where you're then looking at delivery and performance, where maybe in your raw creative process it's less oriented around like what would catch on or what like a crowd would like, or but then once you're getting to the stage where it's structured and now you want to deliver it to people, you start to look at what would be effective for your listeners and for a live performance. Is there a packaging level to it as well at some point, or how does that go?
Yeah, I think that's the stage where it's like the final mixing and editing decisions come in, where it's like you have to get a little bit ruthless, where it's like, oh wow, I like really loved this sound when I was first starting to make the song, but now it's just like masking and muddying up other aspects, and so I'm either going to tuck it into the background or even sometimes just fully delete it. So a lot of times the editing process is a cleanup session where it's like, all right, there's too much going on in this same frequency range, so I need to give these frequencies their space, maybe put them not all at the same time or delete some things here and there. And then also maybe there's a melody that's like, oh, that's catchy. This is going to get the song like stuck in someone's head and make it memorable and make the person want to keep listening to it. Or this is going to really like impact someone on a dance floor. So those are the elements that I want to bring more front and center. So I think, yeah, that's where it goes from the creative flow state process to making those executive mixing decisions to decide what you want to have stand out more in the song.
Yeah, I honestly, as you speak, I'm realizing I think one of the many things that your current success and expansion, I would guess, is related to is I feel like you have a raw, intuitive, embodied sense at this point, from what I can tell, of like what is heavy hitting and connects with a dancer on a dance floor. Like there's DJs and producers that might be very gifted and talented, but not realize at a like subtle vibrational level just how essential like that bass is, so that it hits just right and so that people can feel the rhythm and stuff like that. You know what I mean?
Totally. Well, yeah, I think that brings up the topic of being able to relate to dance on the dance floor and event production, as well as being a music producer, because I've been able to see things from all angles and perspectives. Like putting on Ecstatic Dance, that means I'm at Ecstatic Dance a lot of the time on the dance floor. I'm helping to set up the sound system, run sound. I'm like, sometimes I'm behind the DJ deck, sometimes I'm on the dance floor, and sometimes I'm in the studio producing. And even beyond that, with event production too, I've worked at festivals on the production team. I started out just volunteering as a floater, doing whatever was needed of me. I've done all these roles. So I feel like I've been able to see things from a lot of different perspectives, which that really informs my music production. And then especially as a DJ, I'm also the job of a DJ is to find the songs that are going to really make the dance floor move the most and create a journey, especially with Ecstatic Dance. It's like not Ecstatic Dance is unique because it's not the same energy the whole DJ set, but you're actually taking people on a journey through different genres and energy waves and things like that. So that process of finding songs that are going to make the dance floor move definitely informs my actual music production. And I feel like that's actually why a lot of music producers get into music production, because they really like a certain kind of music, but there's not any music out there that expresses something in a specific way that the music producer wants to create. And so the music producer might say like, oh, I love this genre of music, but there's no songs out there that like combine, like, for example, heavy bass music with I don't know, polka or Celtic, like fiddle and flute. Maybe there's a little bit, but you want to create more of it, or whatever your vision is. It's just like, I feel like that's what drives a lot of music producers to get into it, is they want to create something that doesn't exist, that they feel and they hear within themselves.
Yeah, I love everything you're bringing up. And it also is relevant here, I think, to note that that process from totally creative inspiration, sometimes even needing to get yourself out of the way so that the art itself can just become you and move through you. But then from there, just like the composition of a song, structuring it, and ultimately even editing it down is very similar in some ways to this pattern of creating anything in the world, even if it's not seemingly artistic, like event production or a festival or a gathering. Like it's also about getting excited by an idea on some level first, but then needing to get down to business and actually organize the concrete components and take action steps to make it happen. So it's interesting how the creative process applies not just to what we think of normally as art forms, but simply being active and creative in the world. It's kind of how the world itself comes to be, is through this same process of bringing a vision down into physical reality and innovating things that ultimately are bigger than any one of us. So it
just made me think, behind any beautiful, colorful event, gathering, festival experience, there is a spreadsheet.
Quotable. I like it. That's good. Quotable Bloom there. I like what you said too at the very beginning about how starting as a singer-songwriter, you realized that you needed to get into solitude and nature where you could be undistracted and focus and get into a flow. I think I could ask you this, but do you find that that's a challenge with making music, but being active in a social scene these days where you have to find a way where all these gadgets are vying for our attention? And like, how do you find that you need to kind of block that out somehow to find space for your creative process?
Yeah, I do think it's an interesting thing. I mean, being that a lot of my work involves social situations, I feel like I get saturated in that a lot with the weekly dances and going to festivals, and I'm able to like work and share my music and put on my events, and also part of that comes with being in social settings. So it's actually I need to be discerning with my time outside of that, and so like I'll go to a friend's birthday party, I'll go to like a concert of a friend who's coming through town, things like that. But more often than not, I have to just stay home and take care of music or event production or business and things like that. So yeah, I'd say it's definitely a constant discernment and balance of just making sure I'm able to take care of my own well-being and stress levels and health and all of that, take care of my home and all the responsibilities here, especially with all the plants, and we have cats and bunnies, and just a lot to take care of on the home front. And then there's also all these events and song releases and things to always be tracking and making sure I'm keeping up with the pace of. So yeah.
Yeah, got to be discerning.
Mm.
I yeah, I also like what you said about that when you're doing more electronic stuff, then you're getting out of that solitude into more collaboration often and co-creating the music.
Mm.
And it just reminded me hip hop is a topic that comes up on this podcast often, and you and I are always freestyling and ciphering for fun. And actually, even Bloom, by the way, makes an appearance on one of the original Currency tracks with a verse at
Mm.
the end. I think it's called Raw Food, RA, Raw Food. But, anyways, I thought of that because DJing is one of the core elements of hip hop. Hip hop is not just rap music, it's multiple cultural elements, and DJing is one of them and comes from that culture. And what you said about how you're collaborating more and it's less of a solitary creative process is a part of how that comes out of hip hop, where hip hop through DJing, it started with DJing and scratching and mixing records on turntables, actually like absorbed all these past other genres and influences and other artists and musicians into a new kind of amalgamation and alchemy of music. So it's I think that you're referring to some of that, and it's cool for me to hear about your composition process too, where you talk about figuring out what key it's in and the BPM and the vibe as the starting point. Because with the Nayati Maimuni Order, which is one of the communities I'm involved in, we're currently creating an album that we're going to release of, it's kind of like kirtan inspired, but it's Sufi and Sufi Hasidic music. So they're like kirtan style prayer songs, kind of like mantric songs, but in Hebrew and Arabic, with the shruti and the djembe. And so I'm learning and being reminded now myself about finding, the key and the rhythm for each song and figuring out the structure for that. But it's all built on this fabric of a certain intention and atmosphere that's at the heart of it. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, definitely relatable. And yeah, the whole point about dance too, it's like both sound and movement and dance are different artistic forms of expression, but they're also their own spiritual practices in a way. When we're aware of the rhythm through the sound and the wave of energy and the movement, they're both their own kind of practice as well. So I'm glad you brought that in. Maybe I can ask you about the fusion of different genres. Like I know that's something you've done with your shows is, so I think you play a shovel guitar sometimes, or you used to be doing that a lot
Yeah, I
when you
still
were
do
on tour.
sometimes.
Yeah. I saw you were doing that when you were on tour with Dirtwire a while back.
Yeah,
But
that's where I got it started actually, because Dirtwire has all these funky instruments, and so I figured, oh, I have this shovel guitar that someone gave me for my birthday just sitting in my room. I might as well start using it, and then it caught on, and so yeah, I still use it a lot.
but then you also are often featuring vocalists. Last time I saw you had someone playing, I think it was sax or trumpet and probably sax. But anyways, I know you're always working with different musicians, and I think you're even doing a live band at Unison. So I think that adds a lot of flavor for an electronic DJ when they can collaborate well with live instrumentation and vocalists. And I'm curious how that fusion of electronic and more traditional or live features and instruments and vocals plays into both your recording and production process as well as your performance side of things.
Totally. Well, yeah, I feel like because my roots are with live instruments. I mean, I started playing piano in elementary school and then guitar in middle school. Actually went straight to electric guitar first and then learned acoustic later. But I grew up with my parents are musicians. They have a band called Bob and Wendy in San Luis Obispo. They're still doing shows, and they had a band for a while with another couple called Shadowlands. And so I grew up around live music. My dad plays cello in the symphony as well, and some of my ancestors, family members, were symphony conductors or helped start symphony programs in like Harvard and MIT and Yale and Boston College and things like that. So yeah, the live instrument aspect of things and vocals has always been part of my life experience. So what I've started doing, I feel like I've been taking things one step at a time. So I learned how to DJ first, then I started making my own songs, started implementing my own songs into my DJ sets until eventually I had a lot of my own songs to start playing, and I started bringing in live instruments. So when I went on tour with Dirtwire, since they have so many instruments, I brought my shovel guitar, which, by the way, if you ever have a shovel guitar, it's like a shovel with a slide on it, so it has that twangy like kind of sound. Don't bring it on the airplane as carry-on, because I almost missed the first gig of the tour because I was trying to fly with it, and they said, "Excuse me, sir, you can't take a shovel onto a guitar. That could be considered a weapon." And I said, "It's not a shovel, it's a guitar." And they said, "Well, it's a shovel with strings on it." So they made me check it, and I missed the flight. And luckily I was able to get on the next flight and get there with literally enough time to go straight to the venue, sound check. They held back the doors by 5 or 10 minutes, and then the show happened and I joined the tour. So I made the gig, but I wish someone had told me ahead of time to not bring a shovel onto the airplane. So that's why I'm telling you all now, just in case you're ever in that situation. But anyways, I have the shovel side guitar and my electric guitar. Sometimes I'll play like a native flute. Sometimes I'll play keys. But I've also really enjoyed the aspect of collaborating with other musicians, and it makes it kind of feel like a makeshift band. So it doesn't have to be all the same band members every time, but because I'm playing all these festivals where a lot of my musician friends are already going to be at, I can kind of form a constellation of musicians for each unique event. So recently at Beowulf during the Psychedelic Science Conference, I had my friend Lion Child playing sax and Brianna DiMara playing violin. She plays with Dirtwire a lot. My partner Saoirse singing. And before that, for Bicycle Day, I had my friend Tom LaFond on drums. I had a keyboard player, Hiroki. I had a couple of freestyle artists like Rico Reconnect. And Yash has rapped with me on some of my DJ sets a lot of the times too. We recently did that at the Denver Ethereum conference and some other places. And then had a guitar player, my friend Adam Burkett. So that was like a full band situation. And at Unison, I'm going to be doing something similar. And actually, I applied specifically to play the main stage with a full band. And a lot of the names of people I mentioned to be in the band were already people they were considering booking. So what they did was they made sure to book all the other people so they would already be at the festival. And I actually just got the schedule back, which I can't share the schedule yet because it's not public, but I will say a lot of the people performing with me in my main stage live band set are going to be performing right before me and also the set before that. So they'll already be set up, they'll already be on stage, and everything will be ready to go for when my set comes on. I'll have a drummer, Tom LaFond on the drums, Brianna DiMara on violin, Lion Child, and maybe Johnny Dragon on sax. And Saoirse will be singing, and I'll have some other guest vocalists, Demir, who's going to be performing on the stage earlier that day. And yeah, I just really love the collaborative energy. And even my very first year performing at Unison, I kind of did the same thing, but it was spontaneous. It was while I was already at Unison, I kept running into musician friends and saying like, hey, do you want to come play on my set? And by the end, by that time, I think it was a Sunday afternoon Ecstatic Dance set or around sunset or something like that. I had a full band that was spontaneously formed. So this time it will be main stage, pre-planned. We'll have rehearsals, things like that. But it's just fun to reflect on like, oh, wow, I have been doing that for a long time. It was just more spontaneous before, and now it's more planned.
Yeah, I guess one last thing I'll just plug on your behalf on this topic of working with musicians and live instruments is even in the recorded music that you're releasing regularly, such as the Liquid Bloom collaborations and music with Parangi and Snow Raven and so on. I've noticed that part of what y'all are doing with your kind of new paradigm electronic music and electronic dance music is that you're bringing in a lot of ancient sacred musical elements and helping like re-amplify more and in a tasteful, mindful, intentional way, sacred instruments and chants and shamanic songs and so on from humanity's prehistory. So it's pretty cool to hear all over the world like this global tapestry of sound and music that gets integrated from countless cultures and genres into your current creative process as producers, which is always fun to explore and listen to that.
Totally. Yeah. When people ask me my genre, I usually first say world bass or global bass because it's a lot of collaborations with world musicians. And for example, I'm just looking at my Spotify top 5 songs right now, which means when you go to someone's Spotify and look at their top songs, it means these are in this moment, like within this week, the songs that have been listened to the most. So that's always changing. It's not by number of play count or anything. It's just what's being listened to the most right now when I'm looking at it. So my top song, Electric Dust Redusted with Creature and Murillo. That one's a more like cowboy twangy. That's a song that I always get my shovel guitar out at, and also my electric guitar. And that has this kind of dirt wiry vibe. That actually got onto a official editorial playlist called Bluestronica, which is partially why it's doing so well. So that one actually, that Spotify defined the genre for me, Bluestronica. But the next one, Zen Gompa, Liquid Bloom and I remixed 2 songs by Basher Toe. We actually did a mashup remix, and one of them is called Zen, and it has these Chinese Zen kind of instruments, and the other one is called Sonic Gompa, which is all Tibetan instruments. So we actually made this song with all these fusion of Chinese and Tibetan instruments and made a dance track. And then the next one, Bass Ritual, which actually just yesterday, the Lil Fish remix of Bass Ritual just came out, and we have a remix EP that is, we have 3 EPs actually, because we had so many people remix the song that's coming out. But that's a song with David Starfire, Nijoni, and Mazetar. And Mazetar plays Arabic instruments and sings in Persian and Farsi. And then my 4th song is also with Mazetar and Liquid Bloom called Embers of a Forgotten Prayer. And Maz is actually reciting a Rumi poem in Farsi, and he's singing it and also playing a bunch of instruments. So those are 2 like Middle Eastern theme songs. And then the 5th one, Forest Guardians, which the Kalagna remix is doing really well right now because we just got it on a huge playlist called Buddha Bar, which they started in Paris and have locations all around the world, and they're constantly at all their different Buddha bars. They're constantly playing their playlists of the Buddha Bar playlist. So it just got put out on the summer playlist, and apparently that's a really big deal when a song gets onto the Buddha Bar playlist. So the Forest Guardians Calagna remix. Forest Guardians is a song with Onanya, who's from Argentina, and he's singing some Shipibo Ikaros. And we also have Yuba from the Hunikuan tribe. When he was here in Boulder, we got him in the studio and recorded him doing some Hunikuan prayers. Actually, he did a song about the animals of the night in the jungle. So it's a song to all the nighttime nocturnal animals. And then we actually, Liquid Bloom and I have a song with Snow Raven called Fragrance. And Snow Raven is actually from the Saka culture, where the term shamanism is originally from. She says it's like a neighboring culture that was the actual original shamans, but she's from that vicinity and that area where the actual term shaman initially refers to. So we can technically call it shamanic bass music and be correct about it.
Yeah, that's great. Love it. And I might as well shout out our other mutual friend, Ishel Prisma, who was part of some of the origin story of Liquid Bloom with Amani and is on some of their music with Amani. And I think probably also Shaman's Dreams, Sahuna, and various other amazing musicians and collaborators. The lists of connections go on and on, of course. We could talk about many different friends and artists, but wanted to shout her out. Anyways, I also, you mentioned that you and I were playing around with some freestyle rap at ETH Denver a few months ago, and Fungi Flows was also there, who I know has been blowing up a little bit himself as well right now, and
totally.
And is also pretty full time with his hip hop music. So I wanted to kind of segue here into this topic of as you're kind of demonstrating with your list of trending songs and so on, you are a professional musician, and this is something that people often dream about, and this is something that can be hard to achieve. There's this trope of the starving artist, but you are in one way or another, managing to support yourself, and for years have lived in Boulder, Colorado, of all places, and you're pretty much full time with your art, your entrepreneurship, your music related endeavors, music and dance and events. And you're able to make that your main focus rather than, doing it after you get back from serving fries at a drive-through. So I think that's something to aspire to for creatives if they would like to be full-time with their music. And I think it's something to ask you about, like, how do you relate to entrepreneurship in particular, and how do you manage to succeed? Because you're pretty much blowing up right now. You're at every event worth naming. I'll say, I mean, that's an exaggeration. There's many great events, but in Colorado at least, and around other areas in the States, you tend to be on a lot of lineups these days, constantly getting booked and getting inquiries. And your online stuff has a lot of traction and following. So how do you go about actually succeeding entrepreneurially as a creative person, artist, and full-time professional musician? What advice and kind of how do you approach that?
Yeah, I think that's a great topic to go into, because there's a lot of people that are wanting to pursue music or whatever it is that their passion is, art, dance, event production, anything like that, that are figuring things out for themselves, especially in today's day and age. Like, we have the technology and the ability to do things more entrepreneurial and self-employed. And I think a lot of people just dive headfirst into it and try to figure it out for themselves. And of course, there's courses people can take and trainings and things like that. But I think everyone has their own unique way of finding out what works best for them. So there's the saying, if you work for someone else, then you work 9 to 5, 5 days a week. But if you work for yourself, then you work 24/7. And so I feel like people say that with like a daunting attitude, but I feel like it's actually pretty empowering and exciting, because it means like everything that I do is in some way, or can be, contributing to and part of the larger vision of what I'm creating. And that's actually some advice that one of my favorite teachers at UC Santa Cruz gave me my freshman year, is that not everyone's going to be interested in every subject and topic, and there's required classes and things like that. But the key is to find a way that you can make whatever it is that you're doing or learning relate to what it is that your larger goal or vision is, and find, like, for example, I took a geology class. It was one of the classes I think the classes I got the lowest grades in were computer programming and geology. And I was just not understanding how these two topics would apply to what I was trying to do with my life. But once I heard that from my teacher, I just started thinking about everything differently, of like, whatever situation I'm in, how can this contribute to my goals and dreams and larger vision? So I'd say with self employment, and especially in my situation, I don't have a booking agent at the moment. I don't have a manager. I do everything myself, and at some point that might change, but I've actually been enjoying a lot of the process of the back end and the communications. And there's definitely, I'd say it's more about time for me. A lot of people have other people to do things because they don't like some aspects of the process. And for me, I actually enjoy all the different aspects because I like seeing the whole process of how agreements are made and how things are created. It's just a matter of time. I feel like I need like 4 or 5 of myself to be able to do everything properly, and also have time to rest and relax and not think about work sometimes. But I'd say, to kind of like narrow this down to a core expression, a lot of it has to do with having a vision and a drive, and also like seeing things as a step-by-step process. So it's like, I would love to play Red Rocks one day. That's a big goal that a lot of artists, especially in this area, have. But that's kind of more of a guiding light in the distance. But in the meantime, there's like, all right, the next step in my music process for a while has been to release my first debut Bloomurian album. So this last winter, I just hunkered down in the studio, finished an album and put it out, and did a big album release party. And now it feels like, okay, I've achieved that. That was a huge stepping stone for my music project. What's next? And so now the next step has been like getting to headline some events, starting with some smaller retreats and festivals and gatherings, and then opening for bigger artists, putting out music that's doing better than previous music I've put out, things like that. So yeah, it's like a step-by-step process, but also I think the bigger goals inform and guide the smaller steps.
Beautiful. I love it. I hope people are getting these kernels of insight, because they're priceless, and they apply to many things beyond just the music industry, or even just the events industry and so on. This is a key to entrepreneurship, business, life, success in general, even if you're not self-employed. But this point you're making about having a clear vision, having guiding goalposts of big picture possibilities to work towards, whether that's headlining events instead of opening eventually, but then ultimately, what does it look like to play Red Rocks and so on. But working towards that with smaller bite-sized steps that you can actually manage and handle, and doing one thing at a time makes it real. So that's really good advice. And, I've mostly in one way or another managed to be self-employed as well, pretty much my entire adult life. And we've been able to start an eco village and all these projects, and a lot of it, I can hear represented in what you're saying, because sometimes I think it can be good to be a polymath if you want to go that route and play many different roles, rather than, it's good to have a team and outsource things, but it's good to know all the different roles you're outsourcing yourself to, so that you can be participating in them as best as possible. So it's cool that you're your own agent for now, even though it would help to have 3 or more of you, because part of that world of being an entrepreneur, I think, especially as a musician, probably it just relates to being malleable enough to play multiple different positions at the early stages.
Yeah.
It's funny you mentioned Red Rocks too, is reminding me. I don't know if you know Trevor Hall, but I'll mention. I got to interview Trevor Hall about 5 years ago. On the same YouTube channel that this podcast will go on has an interview with Trevor Hall on it, and I'm hoping to invite him back for another episode soon. So we'll see what happens. But I got to open for Trevor Hall at a Heartfire festival that we organized. That's one of the things that's cool about playing multiple roles, is you can also create your own opportunities, make your own luck if you're playing different positions at the same time. So
For sure.
yeah, got to do that in 2020 for an online event during the lockdown. And that was a lot of fun. But I'm only bringing him up because that's a good example of an inspiration where, as an artist, he's managed to work through those goalposts that you're describing. And right now he is, I think, headlining Red Rocks these days, which is pretty dope.
Oh yeah, every year actually. Yeah, there's only I feel like there's a small handful of artists that play Red Rocks every year, and they're able to do that because it's sold out every year. And so it just makes sense on all sides for them to just keep doing it. So I know Trevor Hall's doing that. Big Gigantic, they have a yearly thing at Red Rocks. I'm sure there's a lot of artists that do, but I actually 2 years in a row got to DJ the official VIP after party for the Trevor Hall Red Rocks show. So I was able to go to the Red Rocks show and then go to the hotel where the VIP ticket holders were staying. And then after the show, they all went back there and I got to do a little after party DJ set, which was super fun. And that was one of those random things where it's like, I had just moved here and started DJing, putting myself out there. I was starting to gain traction. And then my name was in the loop of like when event producers were trying to think of who would be a good person to DJ this event. And so I started just getting people to reach out to me. And I think that's part of the reason why I haven't even needed a booking agent a lot of the time, is because I've just gotten into people's ears and in the loop enough that venues and event producers and promoters and festival producers will just reach out to me, and then I can just decide if I want to say yes or no or negotiate.
Yeah. Well, we have just a few more topics left for the second half of this chat here that I want to get to, but I also want to touch on some of our own collaborations. Before all of that, I want to invite you to share a little bit about the production education side of things. You're putting on music production and DJing related education retreats and gatherings, and that's a part of your work and is also becoming a pretty big trend in the scenes that you're a part of. So I know you're involved with that. And one of the reasons I'm bringing it up is that our nonprofit Interworld Institute, at the core of all of our many different projects, is education. In many ways, education is like the heart of our operation. So even the events we organize with music have an educational component. Excuse me. And as a part of that, we're creating a whole academy, and maybe someday it'll even be accredited. That's our Red Rocks in the distance, right? Is to be offering university degree programs and so on through our nonprofit.
Yeah.
So go ahead.
Yeah, I think, the music education has really been where I got my start with electronic music. I started putting on music production retreats back in 2018 and 19. And I've put on all sorts of things. I've put on a men's music retreat that was happening at the same time as a women's music retreat. So I put on Solar Sound while Shakti Sound was happening, and then we brought the men and women together afterwards. I've done a lot of co-ed retreats connected to festivals where a lot of the people performing at the festivals come and teach at the retreat before or after. I've put on singer-songwriter retreats, and I have recently been involved in some online courses, and I've been teaching with the Boredom Fighters Foundation, which their goal is to empower youth and kids with music production. And especially they focus on electronic music production, but also it's a wide range. And they also get some hip hop in there a lot of the times, and freestyling and beatboxing. But I teach at their summer camp every year. There's a big summer camp in Deckers, Colorado. not too far from Denver, and they have the Boredom Fighters music program. So all the music kids come, learn music production, make songs, and then on the last day, they bring in a huge Hennessy sound system, and all the kids in the music program do a big concert and perform for everyone else at the camp, and it's a fun dance party. So this year, we're actually the month after the kids' summer camp. So next month, actually in August, we're putting on an adult summer camp at the same location that the kids' summer camp happens at. And it's called the Mountain Sounds Music Producers Summer Camp. And it's basically like all these adults that want to learn music production and also probably miss going to summer camp get to come be a kid again at summer camp and learn music production. And so that got huge response. The first day that we put it out, we got enough applications to potentially fill up the retreat within the first 24 hours. But we have been discerning and mindful about who feels like a right fit, who's going to like really take it seriously. So we still have spots open for that one, but it is filling up fast. But I've actually, since I've had so much experience putting on my own music production retreats, lately these days, I've been really enjoying just jumping on board with someone else's offering. So I'm actually a guest teacher for Ruby Chase's online course. I already taught my class, and I'm within the Resonance Cocoon Chrysalis, which she calls it. And then Savage just started his Ancient Future Collective online course, which I'm a assistant teacher and supporter for. We're actually doing a call tonight that I'm going to hop on, and that one is full, sold out from right from the get-go, but it's his first one doing an online course, so he's going to do more of them eventually. So yeah, the music education piece, I think, to kind of wrap this all up for me, because I've been in the environment of music education, that's what really like rocket launched and fast tracked my music production journey, because there's endless YouTube tutorials and things you can find online to learn music production, but without the focus and the guide and being able to ask real-time questions, you can just get lost in the infinite tutorials so easily. And so actually being able to take classes from teachers and then having some hands-on in-person Q&A and things like that really fast tracks the process. So since when I was starting to learn electronic music production, I was also putting on these retreats. I would just book all the teachers I wanted to learn from, and then I would get to take their classes, ask them questions, and learn in the process of producing retreats. And then by the time I was living in Boulder and had a studio, I already had a good starting point, and then continued putting on these retreats to keep learning. So it's been kind of a constantly evolving educational process.
What was the name of that one in Asheville, North Carolina that you did with Zen Tempest? It was more hip hop themed. And I know he does the Flow Dojo, but then there was a gathering somewhere in North Carolina.
Yeah, that was called Vibes. And
Vibes.
We would love to do it again. That one was amazing because it was the same concept as the electronic music production retreat, but it was focused on hip hop. And so there was still electronic music production classes, like Ataya gave a production class, Free Soul and Lava came, and Free Soul taught about their process of working together. So he was making a beat while Lava was writing lyrics at the same time. And by the end of the class, they had the start of a really cool song with a fun beat and lyrics. And so they were showing both at the same time how to collaborate, how to make a beat, and how to write lyrics and bring it all together. So we had a bunch of people freestyling the whole time. We had 3 concerts at a nearby venue called Hawk and Hawthorne. And we just had a great time. We had a lot of people there, a lot of teachers. It was an amazing experience. We learned a lot. You always learn a lot when you put on these retreats. A lot of the times it's like, wow, we kind of booked as many teachers as we have students, and now our costs are really high, and we don't have space on the schedule for everyone to give their offering unless we really squeeze things in. So yeah, a lot of times you get excited, and that's part of similar to making music. It's like there's the initial creative impulse, and then there's the refining. So same applies to organizing an event or a retreat. It's like, all right, we have all these ideas. We have a Google document with all of our meeting notes and all of these fun things we want to do. But like now let's actually get into the realistic, like how is this going to all work time-wise, financially, in a way where everyone feels supported and respected and all of that. So, yeah.
Yeah. Always learning.
Mm.
Yeah, I I love it. I also just wanted to say that I feel like there's something about this quality you're bringing in with the discipline to not get attached to the exciting inspiration and ideas and the energy of something, but to be willing and able, as you refine it, to let it go. It's like this focus on the silence between the sounds and the negative space, that sometimes less is more, because we live in a culture of piling things on and more and more. But I know for me, it's important to learn to let go of that and create the quiet spaces in between. And sometimes it's that emptiness, the place where there's nothing filling it, that actually creates the form and the beauty. It's like the reading between the lines. So looking at the negative space is an interesting idea there.
Mm.
But anyways, Boredom Fighters, I was in touch with them. I need to learn more about it. I think Lily Fangs also was maybe involved with that this year. I don't know the
Mm-hmm.
details.
Yeah, she
But
taught at the last summer camp, and she's actually going to be teaching at the adult summer camp coming up as well.
yeah, very cool. Well, both you and her have played many Heartfire events, and you and I have also collaborated on co-producing all kinds of things. When you first came to Colorado years ago, people were telling you, I guess, to reach out to me, and might have been telling me to reach out to you. And somehow we connected and started a friendship and a collaboration. And one of the first things that we organized together was the Sustainable Living Conference down here at our Eco Village land on the 40 acres that we have here near Colorado Springs. And then we also put on the Naropa University cacao ceremony with Nana Marina Cruz from Guatemala. And the Heartfire, that was a few days long here at our land. And now you and I are collaborating a lot on these interworld events in this new chapter of things, which is a lot of fun. And I'm hoping that some of these next ones in the coming months are going to be really cool. We might have some very special guests, potentially some Indigenous elders again, and then maybe song and voice opening workshops with Ishkala and James from the West Coast, Jamishka. And we might even organize a whole mini tour with them. And my friend Emerson Jane, who's a body worker and 360 emergence facilitator. And I'm hoping that you help headline some of those events around our fall equinox wellness retreat and September gatherings with the Interworld Events project that you've been helping me kickstart, which, by the way, the cacao ceremony is just the night before last with Shola and AJ here in the Springs. Were pretty much sold out as well. So thanks for helping spread the word about that. And
oh, amazing. That's great to hear.
Yeah. So I'm excited to keep collaborating on events with you. And I know that a part of all of these projects, whether it's events or educational retreats, and even a podcast or music collaborations, are about weaving a new culture. It's like this paradigm shift that's trying to happen on the planet. And there's this growing, ballooning web of interconnected nodes of light and inspiration and creativity, and often infused with ancient wisdom from spiritual traditions and teachers and the wisdom of indigenous cultures and so on. So I'm curious, how you see that. And actually, before we even move on to that, I want to plant this seed, because I meant to say this when you started sharing about the production retreats. So a core part, as I said, of everything we're doing with our nonprofit is creating an academy. And I just want to plant the seed that maybe when we have time, and I know you and I are both super busy, but maybe some point we could talk about you or Treeford or someone helping us kind of want to plant this seed for the idea of creating a music education department within the academy that we're building. Our friend Raya is about to launch. She just launched the announcements of their Chinese medicine program that she's teaching in our academy. So that's going to be those are live now. That's going to be open in about a month or two. People are enrolling in that. That's our first public course, and we have a whole online campus. And in-person retreats we'll do as well. So there's already Chinese medicine. There'll be courses on Sufism, on all kinds of different traditions, yoga, etc., in the academy. So I think it'd be great to include not just practices like breath work and so on, but also a creative department and all kinds of different disciplines and topics within our school. So maybe music would be a good one to add on there.
Yeah, definitely. That would be amazing. And I'm also planning to create a whole online course and do online cohorts for people that really want to dive deep into music production and DJing, and maybe even one for event production. So it could be perfect to have a course within your platform. And then for those who want to go deeper, they can reach out to the different ways to kind of get a over time lengthy experience.
Yeah, let's talk about it. I think it could be a big win-win, and if we plan it out early enough, maybe we can be announcing it at our September events when we're touring around with Jamishka and Emmy and other people.
Great.
Yeah.
Love that.
Cool. Well, that's fun. So what are you have this Global Village Tapestry music video where you went all over the world and you filmed yourself singing with people at eco villages and land-based communities on several continents. And in general, I feel like all of these projects are part of this global cultural exploration of a more harmonious and sustainable way of living and doing things in relation to each other and to nature and ourselves. So what insights do you have for us about culture and society and the world, and how can we put some of these creative ideas into practice in a practical, tangible way with the needs of the human civilization today? How do you see that connecting?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, as you mentioned in the music video, I wrote this song about the global village, just eco villages around the world, regenerative projects around the world. And I went to a bunch of places and got everyone at each eco village to sing the song with me and kind of dance through the place to get to showcase it. And so I've been, since I was in college, taking environmental action classes, going to the Bioneers Conference, studying permaculture at eco villages, being an assistant teacher, things like that. And so what I've seen is, I think, a lot of the positive things that are going on in the world that aren't getting headline attention. So, I mean, if for a lot of people in the world, we see what's put in front of our faces and it makes it look like the world is kind of going into this downward spiral of apocalypse, which it is. And the word apocalypse even just means lifting the veil. So things are changing. But something really stood out to me in this book that I have called The World Changer's Guide to the 21st Century. And in the intro, it says, even though the positive solutions aren't getting the headlines and as much attention as all the catastrophes in the world, when you actually start studying and looking at all the positive things happening in the world, you actually see that it's about equal creation and regeneration to destruction and horrible things happening. And so there's actually about as much amazing breakthroughs and solutions and regenerative projects happening as there are like catastrophes that we're all extra aware of right now because it's all in our faces. And so the book says the hope is that the positive solutions will outbalance and outgrow the destructive forces. So really there are so many things. I mean, I do get it popping up in my feed and things like that alongside all the horrible things happening. But there's like, right now, there's all these amazing innovations that are coming out. Like I just this morning saw that I think in France or somewhere, they just invented the first wind turbines that don't actually spin around. They just vibrate and get energy from the wind. And so there's no like more worries about the spinning things killing birds or anything like that. And there's like people figuring out how to make energy through hydrogen and air, and just there's all these amazing solutions, and then regenerative projects and people growing organic food and finding ways to get that to more and more people, and passing laws that stop pesticides and there's all sorts of amazing things happening in the world too that don't get as much attention and energy. But I think as an artist and someone with a platform, whether it's through a podcast, through a show, through a newsletter, we have the ability to kind of announce those things like, hey, there's a lot of destruction happening in the world. There's also a lot of beauty and amazing solutions, and you can come be part of it. And then you can use the music as a way to get people to come to a permaculture action day or donate to a fundraiser or whatever it is. And so I think, yeah, there's a lot of, I call it artivism. Other people have called it that too. It's like activism through art. And there's a lot that can happen and has happened a lot in the past through that.
Yeah, totally. It feels like an appropriate moment to paraphrase the great Buckminster Fuller, who was a genius, right? A designer, I believe, connected to the geodesic dome design, which is inspiring for me because we're coming up with all kinds of original architectural plans for our land here. And I don't remember the exact quote, but Buckminster Fuller had this idea that I'll paraphrase, that you don't, overcome an old system or an old approach by resisting it or trying to break it down or criticize it. You overcome it, you move on from it by coming up with a better new alternative that's attractive enough to make the old version obsolete. And then it just naturally falls away of its own accord. And so there's this idea in Tai Chi and Qigong that energy or Qi follows the mind, follows the awareness and the attention. So if we put our energy and our attention towards these positive solutions and become solutions oriented, what are we creating? What are we focused on building? Then that can help us to overcome these old structures that are crumbling because they are not sustainable, by proposing options that work even better anyways, so people naturally will gravitate towards them. So I think that's some of what I'm hearing and what you're presenting is like, how do we bring awareness and bring attention and energy towards these positive alternatives and solutions that work even better, so that people just choose to go in that direction of their own accord?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and I think there were these projects like the Global Village Network and New Mundo for a while, and Fellowship for Intentional Communities, that their goal was to map out all of these regenerative locations around the world and actually create a network and a map and availability for people interested in that kind of lifestyle to go either volunteer there or move there and live there or whatever it was. And so creating more visibility for these kinds of projects and connecting them through a network like that, I think, is really amazing to be able to show. Like, I've heard the metaphor that it's like the autoimmune system of the earth. It's like this natural response to a lot of the unhealthy things going on the earth. Is like there's all these like adaptogenic antibodies that are coming together to regenerate the land and build community and heal on all levels.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm glad you mention it, because I know this is something you and I have talked about actually working on together. And something that I want to do with the Interworld Institute is build these networks, and build these maps of connection of these more conscious and harmonious and sustainable enterprises and groups and places that people can connect with and make a network out of that. So maybe there can be like a round table of event and community organizers and connectors, and there can be a membership program or affiliations and ways for people to all be part of, like, even I hesitate to use the word database, but the point is to make like a real organized network that people can connect with at different levels of depth, and create unity around that and a cultural shift around that. So I hope we find a way to do it. I know, we got to go one step at a time. As you said, it's 24/7 being an entrepreneur. There's a similar quote I always love that's like, the great thing about working for yourself is that you get to the freedom to pick whichever 80 hours a week you prefer to work. So yeah, you choose your own 80 hours.
Yeah.
Yeah. Were you going to add something?
Oh yeah, I guess that gives you the choice of being a morning person or a night owl.
Yeah, or all of the above.
uh,
Um, yeah. So I think that obviously material sciences, which you mentioned with this wind innovation, for example, are a big part of the shift that needs to happen. A lot of it is physical and external, fungal biology, mycelium being used to grow buildings and replace leather and meat and all kinds of things like that will make a big difference. But there's also the inner sciences, the psychological component of the change. And so I'm curious how you see, like, whether it's psychology or spiritual traditions and wisdom and practices from indigenous teachings and ceremonies. Like, is there any thing that you feel like you want to mention about how we can learn from those components and integrate that rather than just reinventing the wheel with things like permaculture and so on?
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good point. I've throughout my travels spent a lot of time with indigenous communities here in the United States, down in Central and South America, and other parts of the world. And there's a lot of really amazing, important, and valuable teachings and ways of life. And yeah, I've been to Native American sun dances, to sweat lodges, supported vision quests, things like that. And I think there's a lot to be said about learning and integrating and also creating platforms for the indigenous voices. And I've even heard a big criticism of, for example, the Psychedelic Science Conference that just happened. My friend Duffy actually worded it really well, which was that it should be indigenous first and science backed. Like, the term backed by science, actually, there's more to it than just like, I did some research. It's like, I'm actually like behind you, supporting you, I'm backing you. So rather than being science forward, if it was indigenous led and backed by science, or indigenous first and backed by science, it's like the indigenous people have had countless centuries and millenniums of research and study and exploration with these kinds of things, with connection to spirit, with connection to different plant teachers and guides and ways of living. And I feel like that also applies to regenerative living. I've actually heard it said from an indigenous person, are you regenerating or are you generating? It's fine to generate in some instances, but regenerating actually means we're bringing back to life something that has already existed for a long time. So regeneration, true regeneration, actually has to be integral with indigenous people and indigenous ways of life, because you're regenerating what has been, especially here on what the indigenous people call Turtle Island. It's like we're regenerating, we have to work together with the original people of the land here. We can also generate new things, like what we mentioned, new technologies for making things more energy efficient and whatever it is. So there can be some generation, there can be some regeneration. But when we talk about regeneration, it is integral with the people that have been here for time immemorial. And so, yeah, I feel like there's just so much to learn from indigenous people. And a lot of times there's a lot of trauma that exists with indigenous communities. So it's not like you can just like waltz up to a reservation and say, teach me everything you know. Like, you have to come with a lot of respect. You have to prove that you're a safe person. And you have to let the indigenous lead the way in these instances. So, and it's all about relationships too. It's like, the more you cultivate a relationship, the more will be shared with you, the more you'll be brought into things. And I've been on that note, been loving seeing like festivals like Unison Festival, for example. They have a sacred fire every year, and they have a lot of indigenous people that come and lead things around the fire. And there's a lot of festivals that will have an indigenous village or an indigenous zone, and they'll bring people from around the world. There's conferences that make sure to have a lot of indigenous voices on the stage and in their platform. And the Psychedelic Science Conference did do that this year. I'd say even more so than past years, where they really made sure to emphasize bringing a lot of indigenous voices into the conversation and onto the stage and things like that, into the keynote speeches. And I've seen a lot of environmental conferences like the Bioneers Conference that really make sure they're including a lot of indigenous voices. They always have an indigenous zone. And yeah, I feel like there's just a way of relating that the corporate world tends to tokenize and kind of do things from more of a like profit and tokenizing standpoint. But I feel like the way that you, for example, work with indigenous people, with Nana Marina, with everyone that comes through, with and anyone that I've seen bringing the indigenous voices into the conversation in a really good way, really just like brings into the conversation the indigenous perspective and voices. And also it's important, one final thing I'll say to that is like we can't generalize anything, because indigenous means a lot of different perspectives and ways of being, and we can't just say like, oh, this indigenous person said this, so now I have all access pass to to do whatever this person said I can do or can't do, because it has to do with where you are, who you're around, what you're sharing, things like that.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, there's definitely a lot of context there and nuance, and these are deep topics, but I love what you're bringing in. And I do want to add to the critique you're bringing. I'm glad you're bringing all of this up, and I even want to add, not as a protest. Like I'm not into protesting at all. I don't mean this as a form of like activism against something, but you bring up, Unison and the Sacred Fire and the indigenous First Nations camps and stuff like that. And actually one of the original inspirations for why we made Heartfire Festival in the first place, which is now Interworld, was because I was at the Eclipse gathering, and they had a big First Nations camp, which is very cool. Lots of cool workshops, the Sacred Fire. But then you have people coming from, nighttime rave for some semi-mainstream like concert that's happening down the road at the same festival, and the guy's totally drunk and he's throwing cigarette butts in the Sacred Fire and like talking smack while there's supposed to be some traditional or ceremonial songs happening there. So it's hard to mix, right? It's hard to get that right and get the right balance and actually keep it respectful, right? So that was a big part of why we created our festival in the first place, to bring elders there, not just for the sake of representing their wisdom, but so that they can lead and guide the process of how we're going to have this celebration. Because even festivals and festival culture itself is already an ancient thing. It's already an ancestral tradition to come together and celebrate and dance with music. That's already part of these ancient ceremonies. So it doesn't have to, it's like exactly like you said, what would a role reversal look like with something like the Psychedelic Science Conference? What if we flip it, where instead of having, we're not going to bring a First Nations camp to back up what we're doing and just support it. We're going to bring the material Western sciences and the creative process and all of that, and help back up and support and use that to amplify the ancient wisdom of the original science that's already been tested for thousands of years. And so I'm glad you bring that up. And I know that our friends with the Boulder danza groups and stuff were trying to point this out about the conference, and some of the culture there is that, I think there does need to be a working together, but how do we work together and who's at the forefront, right? Like the Kogi tradition and other traditions from the Sierra Nevada mountains of Colombia talk about the modern Western world as a sort of younger brother, and talk about the indigenous traditions that they're connected to as the elder brother. So it's like, you've been around longer, you've already tested things in your own scientific method, or there's another older science that's already there. So I think it can be important to recognize that there's real knowledge there, and that we can be learning from it, not just trying to associate with it, but directly studying it, and learning from it. And I always talk about this recent finding about the Pleiades and how there was a seventh star visible 100,000 years ago, because it shows, I won't go into the details on this episode, but that finding shows that ancient oral transmission through songs and stories around fires from prehistory of native tribes has knowledge that we are just now with our high-tech telescopes double checking and proving to ourselves and confirming, oh, that was accurate, or that story does represent a scientific reality about something actually observable in the sky, and so on. So anyways, these are big topics, but thanks for bringing all of that up and for everything you've shared. I want to give you a chance to say any last words about permaculture and any plans you might have for your farm in Boulder. I'm excited to come check it out. I wonder if we should do any events there. But yeah, what are your thoughts about land regeneration and permaculture design and how that might relate to your project there? I forget the name of that gathering you went to in Austin, Texas, too. I feel like there was a lot of regenerative stuff focused there as well. So if you want to close us out with any topics related to permaculture and so on, I think that'd be fun.
Yeah, definitely. I appreciate us getting into all of that. I'm living here at a 7-acre farm in Longmont, just south of downtown. There's fruit trees. We have bunnies and rabbits, and we planted a bunch of things. We have bunnies and cats and a bunch of food we planted and things like that. But we don't own the place, so it's always a thing to navigate with landlords. But I'd say the solution is like, do what you can, negotiate and compromise where you can. It's like, for example, today the landlord wanted to get all the grass mowed, and we just like wild ecosystems, so we didn't want everything mowed. So there's always some like negotiations and compromises that have to happen when you don't own the property. But it's always going to be different. It's always a learning process. And there's a lot of eco villages and communities that maybe they're great at growing food, but they're not great at actually maintaining harmonious community dynamics, or maybe they're really good at having a lot of councils and circles and making sure everyone's like getting along well, but that takes up so much time that they're not able to be super productive on the growing aspect, or maybe they're more event focused or whatever it is. But I feel like we don't have to be able to be perfect and we can't do everything, but we can do what we can. So I'd say with regenerative lifestyle and livelihood, I'd say it's like just the act of engaging in some form of regeneration, whether it's just a little herb garden in your front yard, or going to volunteer on someone else's project, or showing up for work days and work parties. And that's something that we might collaborate on both here and at your place. Is we might organize some work parties with music to bring people together, and then a lot of projects for people to work on with hands-on, because people are, for one, craving those kinds of experiences, craving being able to feel like they're actually contributing to the earth and the regenerative movement. And also not everyone has the space to do that themselves. So I think that's where the event organizing comes in too, is it creates that opportunity for people to be able to get hands-on. So that's kind of my takeaway, is like, as long as you're doing something and just have that as a core value and take some action on that value, that's great. And if your calling is to manage a massive 100-acre organic food production call, that's amazing. But if that's not what your life path is, then there's other ways that you can still contribute to this larger vision of a more harmonious planet.
Yeah, I love it. And there's people doing it in the cities too. So wherever you are, there's an option in the desert, in the city, in the forest. It's all everywhere. So I love it. And I'd love to help out there. Come see it soon. And, we definitely need all the help we can get. Alec just organized these volunteer days. A bunch of people have been showing up. We planted almost 100 trees already. But there's a long way to go. And I know that it takes a team effort for sure. So I'm happy to stay in touch about how we can cross-pollinate, which you're always good at. And this has been such a pleasure, bro. It's always so good to see you, and I'm excited for everything that's to come. Thanks for coming and blessing up the podcast with your presence and such a good conversation.
Yeah, thanks so much for the conversation and the podcast. It's always good getting into these things, and maybe we should just end with a little free flow, because if you don't know, Yash and I like to get into the zone, because sometimes we're just sitting in a room, but other times we're helping to make the flowers bloom, or sometimes we're just cleaning things up with the broom. But right now we're not even on Zoom. We're on the riverside, so we're going to glide into this podcast while we're feeling so alive.
Feeling so alive, we're not gonna hide. We're gonna lift the veil like an apocalyptic bride on the inside. Yo, I'm coming off the dome. I've got to connect with the primordial Om. I like to have meetings like this. Just the other day, I was in a state of bliss because our friend Shanti said, I want to have a meeting with you, old head, but you got to come over and we're going to do it in a freestyle form because that's our norm. I'm going to drop a beat and we'll have a meeting over a fat beat. And then I said, I'm running on the track like it's a track meet. Yo, this is the best. I must confess, my friend Bloom and I, when we see each other, we play chess. And next up, I'm going to visit your nest.
Oh, that would be the best. That would be blessed.
Hey. Alright, bro. This was fun. Let's do that on stage and prepare and rehearse. And I got some ideas.
Sounds good. Yeah, next podcast we can do the whole thing in rhyme as well.
Yeah, that's a good idea. It'd be a good challenge. Alrighty, peace.
Peace.